safer coming to Cornerstone to church than you are going to a big box store or sitting in a restaurant, even outside and eating.
Our ability to practice our faith, whatever your faith is at stake. So we have to push back. I'm pushing back in the way I know how to do, and I'm going to church and I'm singing loudly and boldly.
Defying the governor, Pastor Jim Franklin with Cornerstone Church in downtown Fresno refusing to shut down his church. Franklin, along with Fresno City Council member Gary Bredfeld, says church is essential. And with that, let's welcome back our panel for the week, Abigail Solis and Diane Pearce. And a lot being said here. And Abigail, I want to start with you on this. Are churches essential? One, we've had this conversation many times, but we're having it again. And should places of worship be allowed to stay open? As many of the faith leaders point out, there's no concrete data that shows it's a place that is spreading COVID-19. Does Jim Franklin and Gary Bredfeld, do they have a case?
Well, one thing we know about churches is that there's a lot of people that congregate together in a small place, and that's what church is all about. So if we're following the science and we're following, we're tracking cases, we know that the way to stop the spread of COVID-19 is to socially distance, is to self-isolate, to keep to ourselves. And if churches are where we know people are going to be interacting with each other, so I think it's.
But Abigail, if they're 6 feet apart and wearing a mask, much like Costco or these other big stores, there's no concrete data saying there is a case inside a particular church that is spreading. So that's their point that they're making. Do they have a point?
I think that there is a way for churches to get together if they're socially distanced, if they're a very small crowd. But what I understand the problem is that a lot of churches are not following that guidance, and they are packing their churches and they're exposing their congregation to COVID, and in turn people are getting sick. So whether it's at church or whether it's at the store, the problem is that we're not doing our part to contain the spread.
And Diane, I'll send it over to you because, a lot of restaurants, let's loop in restaurants now and even salons, they're saying, hey, Governor, can we at least go outside and do our jobs? We've seen Dave Fansler get cited a few times, and now he's building a big tent outside Pismo's just to accommodate his patrons. What do you make of this? Can churches, go outside and start practicing? Is this all about being outside? Is that going to stop it?
I think it's more than that. I think the biggest frustration is that concept of toggling back and forth or, activating the dimmer switch, because what we did at the very beginning, everybody said, we don't know what this is. So yes, let's even take extra precautions and get some data, see what we're dealing with, and go from there. I mean, I almost put out on social media the other day, hey, remember 15 days to slow the spread. And, now everybody's talking about how we're into 120, 150, whatever it is days now, we can't even count them. And that's really the frustration, is once we got to a point where we had protocols and procedures in place, and these businesses signed on to follow these policies, which of course the super majority of businesses were happy to do because they wanted nothing more than to get back to serving their customers, employing their employees, and doing what it is they poured their heart and soul into doing. And so they go through all of this, they open up. There's absolutely zero science or data showing that caused a problem. There's no restaurant that's been pinpointed as, oh, this person got COVID there. There have been a handful of things where people were not following the protocols, were not socially distancing, and there might have been a little group spread among some people or what have you. But the idea that then to come back and say, nope, we're undoing it all again, close your doors, move it all outside in our 100-degree heat and what have you. It's just, again, it's really unfair to try.
Diane, let me ask you this. Do you foresee a state strike team? The governor has put together a strike team. Do you see them coming in and saying, well, this church is going to close down because Jim Franklin is keeping his services indoor services open? Do you foresee that happening?
I think it's entirely possible. It's not like they don't know where to find him. He's been very public about his intent of allowing his congregation to exercise their right of religious freedom and right to assemble. But at the same time, he's going about it very smartly. He's following protocols. They have heavy sanitization policies that they're following. They are socially distancing. It's like a 1,400 seat church, and I think they've had like 350 people in there.
Abigail,
so the idea
Abigail, Abigail, I want you to get in on that because the governor has a strike team.
At the end of the day, our hospitals are at max capacity. I know many people, dozens that are sick right now that can't breathe and don't know what to do about it. 3 people I know last week were buried due to COVID-19. We have a problem, and I support and I appreciate the governor stepping in and saying, I will save your life. I will attempt to save your life by whatever means necessary. I really do appreciate that, because that's the goal here, is to save lives. We have to keep that at the forefront of our minds.
All right, I want to move on to this because I have a couple minutes here. A very explosive political rant on social media by the Fresno Police Chief Andy Hall, and really shocking. He's never really got into the political arena, but he is blaming some elected officials in Sacramento and the state's Judicial Council on the massive spike in violent crimes in Fresno. And he said a lot on Facebook and is hoping that the defunding and depolicing is not the answer with the commission that's been formed. So Abigail, I'll start you. Andy Hall getting in the middle of the violent crime. He's blaming elected officials. Governor Newsom, I guess, pointing the finger here as he has released thousands and thousands of prisoners early.
There is absolutely no data to support that those prisoners that have been released in the last month or so are contributing to the spike, the rise of crime in Fresno. And in addition, it is not only a city of Fresno problem. This problem is across the state and across the country. What's going on in this country is we have people who have been, self-isolating for months. They are experiencing massive unemployment and job loss, food insecurity, housing insecurity. There's a lot going on in this country that needs to be addressed, and we shouldn't blame it on the fact that we wanted to keep prisoners safe. That's not what's happening in Fresno, and obviously it's happening across the country, not just Fresno.
Diane, your thoughts on this? About 30 seconds left.
Yeah, I think that when Sheriff Mims says she can't enforce Governor Newsom's edicts about wearing masks and things like that because she's too busy re-arresting criminals she had to release because of COVID early release programs, that's pretty good data. We've also seen a number of individuals who are released because of COVID programs from detention centers who have gone on to commit violent crimes. They're in the paper. Fortunately, that's one thing the media is picking up on. So, I mean, I'm not going to say that that's not happening, because clearly it is. It's rampant, not just in this community, but across the country, and it only makes sense. So the fact that Chief Hall would feel necessary to speak up and say, look, this violent crime is on the rise. I'm sick of it. Stop attacking the police. Let us do our jobs. To me, that's not a political statement. That's a common sense law enforcement statement of, I'm here to protect the people. Would you please let me do that?
All right. Well, you know what? This is a spirited conversation. I really appreciate Diane, Abigail. Thank you so much for coming on once again. And I'm sure this conversation is going to continue months down the line.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, without a timeline of when the governor will reboot the economy for a second time here in the Valley, how will local businesses cope? We're going to chat with a top local restaurant owner and the CEO of the Fresno Chamber.